he's flaked out again, hasn't he? Look at that. It's out for the count, it is. Bless him. Oh well, hello. So hello. Today I'd like to take some looking at my old family photos that I've got that I found. I keep finding these photos here. That's the funniest thing of it. I keep finding them. So that is a photo of, that's my grandfather on the end, and that's his daughter. That's my dad's sister Joyce, and that little baby will be my cousin Jeff. And that's my gran on the other end, and the old chap in the middle was my great-grandfather, my father's father, who was a very amusing bloke in actual fact. He used to keep bantam hens. No, there were, sorry, I tell a lie. There were Rhode Island Reds he used to keep in London. You know, you got to imagine it's in London. And he made these perches for them, these hen houses, and obviously he botched up, and they were too close together. So none of the hens had any tail feathers, because they all used to, the ones at the back used to peck each other, the ones at the front. So quite an amusing card in actual fact. That's my my auntie Joyce. When she was a little child, she was playing with her toy horse that she used to love. And well, she had a few of them. I think my grandfather used to make them for her in actual fact. As you can see, it's pretty kind of homemade looking. God knows where they got the heads from. The local slaughterhouse, you know. But that's her, a charming little girl, but she unfortunately didn't have such a good time in adulthood. I don't know who these ladies are actually. I thought I did, but I've forgotten. What an idiot. But this is an old stamp, you see, from when the Queen Elizabeth II was very, very young, because this was from, well, I can't see the date. I don't know, maybe you can make it out. 1960 something, is it? Or was it 1860? No, it couldn't be. But it's when my family, my dad's family were from the north, from South Shields. They lived in, you know, County Durham. So that's a letter that's come. Obviously, somebody sent some photos, didn't they? And these will probably be of the house where they had, or something like that. One side of the family was very, very well off, and the other was very, very, very poor. And that was my dad's side, sadly. But yeah. But it's obviously something going on. I don't know. Maybe it's not. Maybe I'm making it all up in it. Maybe maybe they visited this place somewhere. But I have a funny feeling that some of these photos are actually family ones. So I'll keep them together with that, innit? So this is my well, when my grandfather retired from working at Bachelor's Peas in Southall, he bought, well, he wanted to buy a property in Bournemouth, but he didn't have a car, so he went down there on a train and realised quite quickly that he couldn't afford it. So he looked elsewhere, and he went to Kent. I don't know how people know I'm from, had family there, because every time I walk past them, I always hear them saying Kent, Kent. But oh, boom boom. But no, this was a bungalow called Low Walls. It was a semi. It's not the whole thing. My gran only had half. I never met my grandfather because he died, unfortunately. He knobbed off on me. But that's it. It says on the back, Low Walls from the front. That's my dad's writing. And it was a lovely bungalow. My gran had it for years. Unfortunately, it suffered from a thing called heave, which is when, it was built on clay during a very, very wet winter, and then there was a very dry summer, and of course, or was it the other way around? I think it was built in a very dry summer, and then there was a very wet winter, and the clay expanded, and it just cracked the building. It had a great big crack down the thing. My old granny used to just stuff newspaper in there. It never bothered her. But a nice place, a lovely bungalow in a place called Reculver Road. It was in Beltinge near Herne, Kent. So there you go. The old memories working. This is an interesting photo because this is my Auntie Joyce's husband, who was called Eric, and he was a Spitfire pilot. And his autograph is on there somewhere, although it faded off, I think. It's a great shame. He later became a vicar, can you believe it? A very complicated and complex character, and a very charming man in actual fact. I had the great pleasure of knowing him for many, many years. He eventually died of Alzheimer's, unfortunately, as so many older people do, which is a shame. It's gone, isn't it? It's out, it is. But this is interesting because this is my. These were all in a box, by the way. It's the same box of thing. This is a wedding invite to my mum and dad's. I was going to say funeral. No, joking. That's my wedding. My mum and dad's wedding, which was in St Giles's Church in Stoke Poges. St Giles's Church is a very interesting church, in actual fact. If you ever get down to Stoke Poges, it's in Buckinghamshire, I think, or is it? Yeah, it probably is. Probably is Stoke Poges, Bucks. But if you ever get down there, have a look in it. It is. It's in Slough, Bucks, or is it in Berks now? They muddled it all over and fuddled it all around, didn't they? That was my grandma's address, in Warrington Avenue. My mum was from a simple background. She was from a council house in Warrington Avenue, but she's a good woman. She's still alive, 92. That's actually Eric, the pilot. Well, he was by then a vicar, with his firstborn daughter, I think. My cousin is a lovely woman. She's Audrey, her name is. A really lovely woman. I love her to bits. That's my dad sat in outside somewhere. I think that might be his first house, actually, in Ivor Heath in Cheveley. And that is outside the back of the bungalow at where my gran had. You can see my grandfather was alive then too. That's the tall one in the middle is my dad, and the other chap is my grandfather, who was a sergeant in the First World War. He survived it as well, believe it or not. And that's my gran. They had these crystal windows, I remember. I also remember there was a cactus. I don't know if that's a swine that's there, but when I was a kid, I was cycling along here on a tricycle. I fell off the trike. One of the wheels went down a hole, and I just went in the cactus. I just thought, why not? The cactus broke my fall, gran, and she spent the next sort of half an hour pulling the darn spikes out of me with a pair of tweezers. This looks alarming, doesn't it? I don't know where it is. Where does it say that is? Launceston Castle. Stick it up your... aha. It looks like a aha, doesn't it, as well? The stairway to the castle. I don't know. That's definitely my Auntie Joyce. And that's probably, I don't know, one of her daughters. Could it be Beryl? It might be Beryl. I don't know. I don't know which one. They had quite a few kids. They were busy. But that's a typical old fence that my grandfather would have made, because he was very handy with his hands, you see. And he would have woven that himself. He would have done that. He'd have got willow wands and made it. And that would have been in the 1950s. And again, that's my gran on the end. That's my grandfather in there. And I don't know who the lady is. I can't identify the lady in the middle. It may well be. It may well be one of the neighbours' daughters. It's funny because they're semi-detached. The next door neighbours were called Mr. and Mrs. Fell, and Mr. and Mrs. Fell gave birth to a daughter even called Kathleen, and she used the acting name of Kathleen Byron, and she was in Black Narcissus. And she was very famous. She was a very famous actress, in actual fact. And they always used to say, "Oh, my daughter's a film star." Not my gran. The Fells, the Fells. They're living next door, the Fells. But yeah, and she, ironically, I used to live in Northwood, and she eventually, when she was an old woman, went to live in an acting home, an old people's home for actors in Northwood, up the Ducks Hill Road. That's the inside of my dad's college where he used to work, called Ashridge. Which is in Hertfordshire. Again, that's my auntie on her horse. She loved her horse. That's a fact. She was always on some sort of horsey type thing. I think that's her again under an umbrella, bless her, under a parasol probably. That's the Ashridge College where my dad worked. It's in Hertfordshire. Ashridge is near a place called Berkhamsted. Very pretty town. It's a market town. That's my dad's Aunt Beck. She had a rather tragic life because her husband was on board. He was a merchant seaman, and he was on board some ship that was sunk by a German warship called the Gneisenau or something like that. And of course, because of the Enigma code breaking and all the rest of it, they couldn't default that because It's very hard to explain from my silly brain anyway. But basically, my dad's auntie never knew what happened to her husband. She always hoped he would come back and he was a prisoner of war somewhere. But of course, he'd been sunk by this darn ship, this huge, great thing. And they couldn't divulge it, because if they did divulge that they knew that it had been done by that, then they'd have given away the fact they knew the Enigma codes and all the rest of it. It was a complex, weaving secrecy it was, but the poor woman died without knowing ever where her husband was. Sam, her husband was called, my dad's uncle Sam, and that's my dad on the beach in Broadstairs. I think they are there. That's so familiar. It must be Broadstairs in Kent. That is in Kent. And this is the photograph of the wedding of my uncle Eric, the pilot, the old Spitfire pilot, to his wife. Well, my auntie Joyce. They're both gone now, unfortunately. As I say, they're long gone in actual fact. This is interesting. It's an old thing. I found. I don't know what it is, but it would be part and parcel of, I presume. But it's from a very old thing. From 1912, it says there, and the Peel name is, well, my dad's middle name was Peel because he was from Peel. The Peels were Peel was the maiden name of my. I haven't got a picture of it. Peel was the maiden name of my grandma on my dad's side, and so they used to do that in the old days. They used to put the maiden name of the lady into the son's middle name, as it were. That's what part and parcel of the thing was. Nothing on the back. It's just an old. It's a confirmation card, from the church, and obviously there's who is it? It's George, isn't it? It's St George, who killed the dragon, sort of thing. There's an old card there from. I think that's on the Salisbury Plain somewhere. I think that white horse, if I remember rightly. It probably says it to you down there, didn't it? Can you read that? I can't. You got to be jerking in it with my eyes. Ormington, does it say something like that? Orpington or whatever. I think Orpington's in Kent. But you can see how long ago it was. And again, it's to one of the Peel family members. There you go. And that's the Queen when she was a youngster. And again, that's I think that's a wedding photo of probably the same wedding in it. I think these are old what are they called? Negatives. They're the way things looked. Anyway, this video's racking on again. And I've got the wind in it. So I'll leave you on Jimmy, the handsome one, and I'll bid you good day, and thank you very much for watching. Bless you all if you've got this far. Wonderful. Cheers.